And it looks like we are live. Let me just clear this. Um, Welcome to another episode of Beyond the CMS, where we do our best to talk about trends and technologies that are impacting the way digital content is shared. And we always have a special guest. And today we have Daniel Serrano from Griddo calling in from Spain. And we were just talking about how beautiful things are in Spain right now. Thank you for joining us. I really
Well,
appreciate it.
thanks for having me, Chris. Absolutely delighted to be here with you today and with your audience.
Oh, wonderful. So, the way this all started out is that our customers, who are typically CMOs or
Mm,
decision makers who are choosing a content platform, they typically have a lot of other stuff to do. And they were just asking a lot of questions about the right platform for them. Does it fit their industry? So, we thought, why don't we kind of create a show or a podcast, and we take snippets of this later and share that out afterwards. But we've themed it on the Car Guy Show, which is a show on National Public Radio in the United States, where people call in with questions about their car, and
mm,
you ask us anything, and that's really the format of this show as well. So anyone who's taking some time out of their day here on a beautiful Thursday in anywhere in the world, please feel free to ask us anything. But really, this is a show all about you and Griddo. And thanks for joining. Please ask us questions. I'll be manning the chat on the side. Uh, but Daniel, let's start off. Tell us a little bit about yourself and
yeah,
Griddo, and then we'll learn more.
yeah. Well, about myself, I don't like to speak too much about myself. That's one of the things that most people tend to fear. But well, I'm an industrial engineer inside a designer's body, I would say, or a designer's mind, and that has led me through very different paths. And in this late stage of my career, I started working again in the digital industry. First consulting for Fjord, then in Sequoias, and from that experience, I've worked with plenty of different customers and different industries. But one of the industries we were working a lot with was the higher ed industry, right? Universities. That's something that happened particularly at Sequoias. So from there, we started thinking about all the needs that these universities had and kind of conceiving the need for a particular platform that could solve the problems. That was not an off the shelf platform because, well, usually people don't think about universities in that way, but they are extremely complicated organizations, right?
Mhm.
With different stakeholders and stuff. So I brought all these knowledge that I had and the company had as well. And at some point, we were working with one of our clients, IE University,
Mhm.
and we realized that it was a sort of a changing point in time where technology was changing a lot. They were facing a very hard problem that needed to scale really quickly. Um, their new digital presence because basically they've come from being a business school to become a university. So a lot of things needed to change at the time. And that idea of scale and speed was something central to what we were doing with them, right? So that's kind of the real starting point for Grid as a CMS or a digital experience platform because there's some differences between both kind of products, right? But the thing was that we perfectly understood the problem, the needs that the marketing department had, and many other areas of the university. And with that know-how, we thought about creating something really um, how do you say that, empowering for the team,
Yeah.
right, that were working with it. Because when you spend a lot of time working with the universities, and you can have this kind of step back vision, you see that there are a lot of efficiency gains
Mm.
from usability standpoint, from data structure standpoint, from the content and the way you work with that as well. Um, and distill all of that in a new platform was something that was kind of the goal at the beginning, right?
Mm.
Now, because we had these baggage in Sequoias and in Fiora as well, from working with a particular human-centered design way of doing things. One of the things that we thought that was really important was to um, really get something that could be empowering, as I said. So um, from there, we set off a goal for Griddo, and the main goal was to transform the chaos that usually the universities have in the form of a fragmented digital landscape with hundreds of sites, outdated tools, security risks, and get all of these and transform that chaos into a single unified ecosystem. And that this ecosystem could fundamentally give to that true autonomy, that freedom to the marketing and content teams, right?
Mm.
So that was kind of the idea and how we started building it. And that shift from powerless to powerful
Mhm.
for these kind of people has a massive ripple effect at the scale that a university has, right?
Mhm.
Um, if you think about it, when you empower one person, well, they can launch one page faster. But when you empower hundreds of different communicators across marketing, admissions, alumni relations, I don't know, every single academic department, actually, you fundamentally are going to change the digital metabolism of the entire institution, right? That's why we like to call it like an ecosystem, because you feel that the university behaves a little bit like that.
Interesting. Do you know, we I know we've invited some folks who are managing technology for higher ed to the
Mhm.
show. We'll see this now and later. Um, I'm assuming there's some folks that may just not know that there's a very specific CMS tailored to higher ed and their needs. Can you talk a little bit about what's the difference? Like, what's unique about the needs of higher ed when it comes to a content platform?
Yeah. Well, there's one thing that has to do with the scale, what I mentioned before. It's not that there are not other businesses that had an scale issue, but they have that scale issue for different, uh, or they have to fix different problems. Here, what is when we think about a university, one of the things that is really, really astonishing at the beginning when you start understanding how they work, you get you wrap your head around that, and then you understand it better. But it's the sheer amount of different stakeholders you have to cover.
Mm, good point.
It's
Yeah.
huge. Governments, um, parents, students, of course, prospective students, professors, or the faculty in itself, research centers. You have plenty of different
Mm.
stakeholders. So there's a lot of different requirements to organize all this content.
Okay.
And at the same time, um, there's a need to, or different needs to gather these different audiences that you have, right?
Mm.
So what this ends up producing most of the time is an ecosystem that exists, that is really fragmented, as I mentioned before, right?
Mm.
Because that's the way people have found out to solve the problem. Every, I don't
Mhm.
know, every department probably, or even, oh, that's one of the things that we found out when we were mapping out the whole IE ecosystem at the beginning, when we started with Griddo, whereas it was that you have schools that had their website, but also masters within that school that had their own website. And then you start, digging it down, and it was sort of a fractal, you keep like double clicking and boom, and you have another thing, and boom, and you get another thing. And that's really particular from that industry, I would say, from the higher ed industry. Then another thing is that they have some very important requirements from a legal standpoint.
Yeah.
Um, and that's something that I think is really, really important, the way you see that some folks are changing their roles in the United States, particularly when it comes to different things like, for example, um, accessibility,
Yeah, for sure.
right? So accessibility was something that you did because you thought it was good to do that, and to get to different users, but not everyone did that. So all of a sudden you have the government that is kind of forcing some minimum requirements in order to provide that accessibility. But that's just one example. You have
Mhm.
other plenty of other requirements from the government. So that in itself makes the whole idea of the ecosystem of a university something that is complex.
Gotcha. And you mentioned multi-site capabilities because a lot of people don't think about that a
Yeah,
university website is really a cluster of many sites, often one for each
absolutely.
faculty, and there's different departments. Do you want to talk a little bit about just what is that from a practical perspective? Are you within Griddo and you can click clone a site, or maybe just talk a little bit about some of those editorial kind of workflows of
Yeah,
creating sites and managing content.
yeah. So the one of the important points that you were mentioning is like these sheer size, right?
Yeah.
And when you think about it, the main problem is that um, every department has tried to solve their own problem by themselves. So what's the problem that this produces? What's what we see as a consequence of this
Mhm.
behavior, which is, by the way, which is really tied into the philosophy within the university, because I didn't mention that before, but if you think
Oh,
about it, one of the particularities in the universities is that they have a very particular way of governance, if you want. They kind of flat structures, right? From that point of view, and the budgets are siloed to these structures as well, and that produces some dynamics within the industry. But again, you have this huge structure, and the very important thing that you may think when you want to tackle the problem as a whole is that you need to give these empowerment to the teams so they can actually create the website they need, so they can actually put those things out there very easily.
hmm
Now, there's a drawback with that, and is that you have to keep some very important things for universities in mind. For example, the brand, right? And the good thing about having everything in a single platform is that you can manage that at that level of scale. So you can um, create a whole bunch of different construction elements that will allow you to cater to all these different audiences within the university, but keeping your brand tone or your brand identity in the right place.
Could that be
So,
something as I think we used to call it lock and publish, where maybe the header is always the same and it's
mhm.
controlled at a higher governance level?
It's something like that. What we did, it was to take a very different approach to that. If you think about most of the CMSs that you have out there, they build with a very limited amount of content presenting units, and that's the template. And
hmm
usually, when you want to put a new page out there, you're going to choose from a limited amount of templates that you've got, right? But what we see when we are working on that is that this template has to fit very different needs and requirements from different parts of the organization. So that's a nightmare for them because most of the time they have to feed the content to the template and not the other way around. And that was a really important insight for us when we created Griddo. So the idea was that, first of all, we need to modularize all of these. And we have to allow the editors to build the page they need. So it's basically the idea was kind of, let's build a Lego, right? Where you can put the pieces
Mm-hmm.
where you need them. But the thing is that, when you think about the Lego, you have different parts with different sizes and stuff, but you have a limited number of colors, uh, right? Because that's the kind of brand that they're building from there. So if you take this analogy, what we do is that we have a full design system within Griddo that is something that's really different from other platforms. That design system is really flexible, but it's completely tailored to the brand guidelines. And then from that, we start building those modules or micro formats that you can work with within a page. In that way, from point of view of Griddo, a template is a starting point. It's like the template of a PowerPoint, for example, or a Word document, right? You get a template, you get a starting point, but you can modify things within that template. Well, same thing happens in Griddo. That's kind of the idea behind that.
Okay.
And that unlocks many things, because if you think about the pieces of different pieces of content that you have to publish as a university, right? Think about, I don't know, a course on mathematics compared to a course on art, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Very different things. Do you sell them exactly in the same way with the same template? Well, that's kind of hard.
Right.
And that's what's been done so far for the sake of kind of speed and scalability, but there's better ways to do that.
Yeah.
And that's what we thought about while doing Griddo. Bringing that knowledge that we have in the domain and being capable of giving the institutions the flexibility they need from the platform, so the Griddo can become a very tailored solution for them and for their brand, not a rigid system that they have to work around. And from that point of view, our job is to provide that robust, hassle-free environment so that teams can focus on creating great content that beats their brand and not fighting with the technology. That's kind of
Mm-hmm.
it.
Just speaking about teams and design systems, and I guess the structure of the platform, what does the team look like to stand this up? Is this developer intensive? How much resources do we need on the university side? Can you talk a little bit about that? And I'm saying that kind of answering a question that decision maker might be interested in.
Sure, they always ask that question, and there's a reason for that, because it changes fundamentally the way you're working. So you want to know what would I need now, because if I change all these method system, well, I would need different things. And one of the things that is important is to understand that obviously the platform needs to be integrated within the university. There's different layers of integration. One is the brand. We talked about that a bit extensively, but there are other things. You need to connect to other systems within the digital ecosystem of the university, right? If you think about it, you have the LMS, you have the student information system, you have the CRM, very important when you're thinking, and you have the DXP that is the voice of the university somehow.
Can I ask you a question? I'm sorry to interrupt. It just always comes up, and you just touched on it. Can you describe in your words the difference between a CMS and a DXP? What's your version of that?
Yes. The difference between a CMS and a DXP. Well, CMS is a very well-established category within the industry. And what a CMS tries to do is to manage the content, right? So you can find headless CMSs that just try to manage the content and don't care about the presentation layer. That's, for example, Contentful, right? Or there's, well, many CMS are going to the headless approach and architecture. And that makes sense for many different applications. There are some other CMSs that are capable of managing the content, but at the same time, giving this presentation layer, right? That's the case of WordPress, for example. Now, WordPress does it in a pretty monolithic way. And what we did was to build a system in a very composable way.
Okay.
So you can, the main thing is that you can connect to many different systems within the university. And that has a huge advantage. The advantage of that is that not all the information is content that you actually manage in the content management system.
Okay, right.
It's content that you need to recover some from other systems. Like, for example, I was mentioning the student information system.
Yeah.
And there's other content that you need to push to these systems. For example, to the CRM. Every time you have, a form field, for example, right? So from the point of view of the DXP, there are some pieces that tend to think and are aligned to create the digital experience of the people that are actually going to consume that. So a headless CMS is not going to provide the information, the consumption layer. It's just the data, right? The DXP is going to, of course, provide that experience that the users are having, but it's not concerned about just managing the data by itself, but getting the data from very different sources in order to do that.
Okay. And Griddo is a DXP. I think that's the
exactly
the right way to put it. Yeah.
And as well, there are some DXP that tend to have different, or if you want, push the information and the presentation layer to different touch points. You can do that in mobile, for example, and you can do that in web and stuff. And there's a big difference there between some DXPs and others. So in our case, because everything is AP based, you can push the information whatever you want.
Okay.
But from the point of view, what we are doing right now at Griddo, the presentation layer basically is going to happen in the web and in the landing pages. So we started with that because that way you can build almost all the experience that you want to provide to the future students and as well to the present students, alumni, and so on. So from that point of view, that was the main channel for having this interaction with the users, right? There's other channels that you can think of. For example, you can think about social media, right? And you have the content management system that you can push to social media as well. But that's not something we're dealing with right now, just because it's too, you want the awareness phase of the product, and that has to do a lot with basically the kind of budgets and campaigns, and it has a very different dynamic than what you get when you're more in the middle part of the funnel, if you want to think about it that way. But that nurturing phase and conversion phase, and then all the services that you're providing when you have a client or a student within the university, right? Because you have plenty of them, if you think about it, from dorms to certificates to, there's plenty of different things that you have to provide, interfaces that you have to deal with, right? So all the ones that are web-based are something that we try to serve with Griddo.
Lots to think about, eh? So we haven't talked about AI yet.
Yeah.
Always a fun topic, and I'm sure that's on your radar. Sure. Do you want to talk about what you think about AI and what you're considering to use it for in your roadmap?
Yeah. Well, we started to invest and learn about AI pretty early in the current state of AI, because AI has been there for a while, right? But in the current state of AI and how these things have been evolving for the 3, 4 past years, we've been already tiptoeing on that a lot, and we started to introduce AI services to Griddo about 2 years ago. Um, Quite frankly, back then, the AI, particularly the ones that are generating content, it wasn't quite ready for production.
Sure.
So, but there were some things that was really good for, and we started to work on that. And those things were, for example, for metadata,
Yeah.
and that's a very important part of what you're doing, because humans, we don't like to work on metadata,
Mhm.
but AI doesn't mind. On the other hand, it does it pretty well. So we started to work on integrating these services as wrappers within Griddo, and keep learning from that, right? And as well to learn how we could create a good user experience that can interact with AI in a pretty seamless way, if that's possible. We didn't want to be AI. We just think about how we improve this process.
Right.
And if we can improve it with AI, so be it. But it's not about the AI by itself, right? So we were introducing those services, and from there we started building more momentum, just in the know-how of what we could do, and at the same time learning about what was going on in the industry, right? Because chatbots have evolved a long way. Well, LMs, if you want, have evolved a long way in these 2 years. So one of the things that we started to do was to think, hey, we have centralized all the content of the university within Griddo, and we have a database that is completely structured and that can be perfectly used for search, for example.
Mhm.
So instead of relying on external search systems, we can do it ourselves. And we can even build a chatbot with all the know how that you have in that huge database, where, for example, you have, well, let's say all your commercial value
Mhm.
propositions there, right? You have plenty of information from that point of view. So we can work on that. And we
Mhm.
started to build a smart search system based on AI. Sometimes our clients want it to be interactive, like a chatbot. Sometimes they just want to be a search, box with some kind of results or something more similar to what search engines are doing right now.
Mhm.
Uh, and once we work on that and had that solution, we thought, okay, that's a very good point as well to feed personal content. Because at the end of the day, what you do with an LLM is to ask a question, and you want a personal answer to that question,
Mhm.
right? So what if we put these two things together? And we are working on that to create greater personal experience.
Cool.
So we can not answer the question in a very how do you say that,
Like,
written way,
mhm.
but trying to give you the right contents, the ones we believe that are going to be or going to fit your profile better, the way you are navigating, the kind of things you're searching, the kind of things you're looking for. Okay, uh, we can track that and give you the things that are more related to what you're looking, because we have these sort of vector database that is, relating these things. And that's something we are starting to test with some clients. I gotta say that this last idea of the Griddo personal experience is something that is kind of freaking out a little bit the marketing people.
Okay. Yeah.
It's curious because I didn't expect that. It was something that we didn't expect. There's just a parenthesis on that. Every single thing that we do, we test with our clients before rolling them out. So
Sure.
when we're thinking about them or it's an idea of them, and we test them with other clients, and we try to be, from that point of view, very, very user centric. But with that idea, it was very difficult, to kind of convey it from the needs of the clients. So we were more like, oh, let's build something and let's see how it works and try to push it. see what happens. And the learning is like, well, you have backlash.
Yes, yes,
That's one of the things.
absolutely.
But why? That's the reason that the why is what's really interesting is that, you know, the marketing people, they particularly in digital, they need to know what works and what don't. They have all these analytics systems, behind the scenes, trying to understand what is going on with their content, what is going on with their processes and stuff. And when you put a couple of pieces that are going to be random
Mm-hmm.
from their point of view, I mean, they are particularly personalized for you and customized for you, but from the point of view of the tracking, it's going to be a bit random. Then it's going to be very hard to just keep track of what was going on. What was the real reason that, allowed this conversion, for example? And that freaks out the marketing guys.
Right, right. Yeah,
It's
it
very
does.
intuitive, right? But it's something that is happening. I'm pretty sure that we'll find a solution to that conundrum somehow. But right now, that's kind of the first reaction, and that's why we are not rolling out that functionality like right away. We want to keep testing it.
Perfect, perfect. Time goes by really, really fast when we get into a good chat. If you don't mind, if I just take up just a couple more minutes of your time, I did want to touch on your partner ecosystem. Do you implement these projects yourself? Do you work with partners? Do you work with internal teams? How does that
Yeah.
work?
So as I mentioned, Griddo needs to be implemented, right? So from that point of view, we work with different partners. So we are actually in the phase of trying to find partners that want to implement Griddo. Right now, we have a couple of partners, one in Spain, which is Sequoia, which is basically where Griddo was created. And then we have one in Chile, which are the two markets that we are working on right now. We're about to enter Peru and Colombia as well, and we'll need to create that network of partners there. And well, we are starting to think about other countries. Obviously, that's something that has to happen. But we are not we don't want to rush the process. You want to learn, tiptoe, see if the solution really fits the bill out there, and then go ahead. So that's why we are talking to different partners. That's how I basically met you, I guess.
Right, right, yeah.
And get to know if you guys that have and by you I mean different agencies, right, that have the know-how that deal with that every day, can see the sheer value that Brio can bring, not just to our partners, but to the universities as well, right? So that's what we're doing. So it relates a little bit on the thing that you asked, and we kind of changed gears a little bit fast there. But it was, what is a CIO or a CMO going to say? Like, what do I need now? That comes to what we were talking about, the agency partners. Well, things are going to change. So what I've seen is, for example, in the US, there are a lot of universities that have their own capacity, like their own internal agency. Well, they can manage everything there if they need. It's just a matter of learning React, basically.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. And if on the other hand there's a collaboration with one partner or a couple of partners, usually there's just one partner for that. Well, that's where the relation is going to change. So you are going to have your people more, the editors, the people that is working on the content. They're going to have way more time to think about the strategy, to be creative, and you guys about making the tweaks or the new modules that they need in order to tell the story. Because the library is going to be there. And for example, with our university, they are creating websites, like I would say crazy, about like at really fast speed without even asking anything, because they have a huge library right now. And every time they need something new, and they're constantly thinking about new things and new formats to communicate, well, that's when they come to Sequoias in this case, which is the agency that's working with them, and they create those new pieces that put in their library, and then they can keep using them as they need. That's the model, let's say.
Perfect. I did want to say thanks. It looks like we have a question for Janice. We're running out of time, but maybe I'll just leave it as a thought. When you talk about personalization, it does impact your analytics. How do you track all this stuff with another layer of if that, then this? But probably a topic for another day. We're a little bit over time here. Listen, to anyone who's watching this now or in the future, Daniel, if people want to get a hold of you, could we leave your contact information maybe in the comments below? It's griddo.io is the URL, and we'll note that as well. At Dotfusion, we've been building websites on niche and best-in-class platforms for 20 years. If you want to work with us, you can always reach out to me. But most of all, just thanks a lot for your time. Daniel, thanks for joining in. It's what's probably near supper time, as we would say here.
Yeah, but we're close.
And for everyone who's made some time in their lunch hour on this Thursday here. We'll be back in a couple of weeks. And just thanks again. We're going to sign off now. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I just have to find out where the button here is. Okay. Have a great day.